Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Kink Consultant Podcast. I am joined by Mistress Tash Mia. She is a professional dom for the last 7 years, has been in the kink lifestyle for a lot longer than that. Tash, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
I love your Instagram. Is it World of Tash Mia?
Yeah.
I absolutely love it because your content is always so funny, but also I feel like we don't have a lot of humor from the female dom side, and I love that you put it out there. Your Instagram is so funny. It is full of different kink perspectives, but specifically I love your view as a dom and essentially how to be a good sub, and I'm always entertained by your posts. So thank you for putting so much content out there. I love it.
You're welcome. Yeah, I guess the idea of my Instagram was just to be a reflection of myself. And I guess when I kind of got into dominance, I still had that very traditional view of what a dom is. It was like dark, scary, mean. That was what I thought a dom was. And I was like, oh, I'm never going to fit into this because that's just not me. Like, I'm very sarcastic naturally. And I actually bring that into my sessions because I think the best doms are authentic doms, obviously. So you're going to be bringing like bits of your personality into there. And so I guess I just wanted my Instagram to kind of reflect all the doms out there who didn't really feel like they fit into that box. Because I certainly, when I begun, I didn't feel like I fit into the dominance box.
Because society and media tell you kink and BDSM look such a specific way. But I think that's why I was drawn to your content too. Anyone who's out there showing there are many different sides to kink and it looks different ways is something I'm immediately drawn to because I feel I'm trying to do the same thing with the education side. And you are a fellow educator. You've started a brand focused on that.
Exactly. And I think it's like, as you are too, it's about normalizing it, right? Because one of the biggest things I saw when I started as a pro dom was I was pretty much the only person who knew these people were submissive. And I found that really sad that I was the only one seeing this incredibly vulnerable, beautiful side of you. And the reason for that was because there was shame around it. And the only way we de-shame something is by normalizing it and talking about it and showing like kink is very normal. Desires are very normal. It's just society that has told us, as you said, like kink is this. And if you want to fit in this, you have to be like this. And that's why I started my brand. And that's why educators, kink is for everyone.
Yes, it is absolutely for everyone. Anyone who wants to experience something slightly different, as long as you understand the fundamentals of negotiation and what feels good for you, which easier said than done sometimes, you can explore kink and you don't have to go to the extreme.
Exactly. Like I've had extremely powerful scenes that if you were going to tell someone, they're so basic. But that's because it's about my headspace and my partner's headspace and like where we can go with that headspace. And I think people don't realize that, yes, we are using sometimes physical tools, but they're more to get us to a psychological state.
Getting people to a psychological state, though, can be such a big order if you are not used to it. So do you have any tips for people listening? Because I have a lot of listeners whose their partner is kinky and they're trying to learn how to navigate that. So do you have any advice that you give new kinksters of how to start doing that?
No matter whether you're dom or sub, I always start with what are your desires? That's number one. It's incredible how many people don't actually know what their desires are. How many times do people sit down and think, oh, what would I like to try? Where do I want my headspace to go? That's another really big one for me is what is your intention? And I guess as a pro dom, most people are coming to you to get into a different headspace. So as a pro dom, you actually need to be really good at being able to facilitate someone getting to that headspace. Step one, whether you're a pro or you're in the lifestyle, whatever, is creating safety. No one is going to be able to surrender and trust you if you're not creating a safe space or a safe environment for them. And safety is in multiple areas. It's obviously like physical safety, which means as a dom, you need to be competent in what you're doing. So you need to know, how do I tie the rope properly? Or, how long should someone's hands be above their head? I mean, there's some really basic ones that people just don't know. Am I physically safe with this person? Another aspect is, are they going to respect my boundaries and limits? No one is going to be able to surrender and trust and get into that headspace if they don't believe that the person doing it is going to respect them. Another area I always give advice for the dominant is, you can't cross that threshold to go against someone's beliefs and values. I shouldn't be pushing a submissive outside like their North Star, whatever thing that guides them in their life or their beliefs or their what their limits again, if they've communicated that to me. Like, I need to take care of their spirit as a person as well. So I think safety is like number one, because that leads on to, you know, vulnerability and trust and all those things that you need in order to surrender or to get into that next headspace. And even for the Dom, we want to get into that flow state, don't we? We want to like feel like we're on fire and we're in it. And like you finish those scenes and it's like there's no bigger high. The adrenaline, the endorphins running. And we're not going to get there if we feel that our sub's just not coming along the ride with us. Like we haven't got their buy-in. Those things like that safety is just so fundamental. And again, like communication, you need to be able to do that pre-scene negotiation, because no one's going to go anywhere if you don't know where you're going. It's kind of like the GPS before you go on the trip. We've got to know where we're going. We've got to get on the same page. We've got to discuss all those things like boundaries, limits, activities, getting that enthusiastic consent. The more you can understand your submissive in that pre-scene, the better the scene's going to be. My third one is always energy. You've got to be able to read your submissive's energy. Like attunement, at the start of the scene, I always attune to my submissive's energy. Generally, what I do is I'll come up around the back of them, whether they're like maybe on the St. Andrew's Cross or maybe they're just kneeling. I will come around the back of them. I'll get them to close their eyes down. I'll put my hands on their chest and we'll do 3 really deep, slow breaths together. And really for me, what I'm doing is I'm attuning to what their energy is doing that day. Is it nervous? A bit sleepy? Does it need to wait? And then from there, I can get into the scene. And if I can get into their energy, that's going to give me a better chance of leading them into another psychological state.
That makes so much sense. You are a wealth of knowledge. I'm a switch. So when I'm in the dominant role, I'm like, yes. But then you just mentioned things where I'm like, oh my God, how long am I supposed to leave someone's hands above their head? I do not have
20 minutes normally.
Okay, 20 minutes. We've answered that question. Okay. I do not have the setup in my house right now to do such things, but the hope is to one day have a dungeon where I will add that to my list. And you call yourself a professional space holder, and everything you just described, it's almost like that's your North Star, would you say?
Yeah, I think for me it is, because obviously like now being in education and now I've been coaching for a few years, you know, I did a somatic certification last year. I don't really see it as that different to what I've been doing. It's funny because when I was doing the course, I'm like, oh, this is what I've been doing the last 6-7 years. Like the principles is all the same. So I was really surprised by that. And we had to do 100 hours of student to student coaching before we even got onto practice clients. And one of the feedbacks I kept getting was, oh, do you do this already? And I'm like, well, not technically like this exact thing, but I space hold. And I think the essence of any type of work where you're working with someone or you're leading them or you're trying to hold them, it all comes down to the same thing, which is being able to hold that space in a really safe manner and being very aware of your energy and being very present. I think presence is huge for a dominant. Someone can sense when you're present with them. If you're in a scene with a dom and like they're checked out, you can feel it. It's very rare these days that someone is that present with us. And that's why it's so special. Like someone in a space for you, holding that space and guiding you is so rare these days. So I think when you can master that presence, it's just incredible.
I think it has always been rare to have that level of attention put on you, but now it's even harder because of social media and the distractions and having our phone all the time. And I imagine your clients also don't have their own phone during a session.
Oh, no. I mean, the only time I would have my client's phone is when I did a really good psychological one. It was a new client. He was actually just over here from the US and he went to the local kink shop that I'm like their favorite client. He's in my studio and they're like, oh, you have to see Tash Mia while you're here. So he came and we had, I think it was a 3-hour session. It was an experienced sub, very young though. And one of the things he had on his intake form was he liked blackmail. And so in the pre-scene negotiation, I was like, give me some examples of what you mean by blackmail. And he's like, oh, well, one of the doms I've seen in the past, she blackmails me for the session tribute fee. And I was like, that's pretty boring. I'm not going to copy someone else. I'm like, don't worry, leave it with me. He also liked the idea of being exposed. So I had that piece of information. And so during the scene, he was in some compromising positions. And I go, where's your phone? Because normally I just get them to leave it where they get changed. So I went and got his phone and I took photos of him in his position. And then I just swiped up. And you know, when you like swipe up to WhatsApp, it'll show you the last person they messaged.
Yes.
So I swiped up. I saw that. Of course, I didn't actually do it. And I'm like, cool, that's been sent to Sarah. And he goes, what? And I'm like, yeah, I just sent it to Sarah. He's like, that's my sister. And I'm like, well, you told me you wanted to be exposed, so you should be thanking me right now. No, I mean, she's probably calling your parents as we speak. By the time you get back to America, it'll all be done. And he was like, seriously, did you send it? Like, he was so on edge. And then at the end, he goes, I was so close to calling it orange because I wasn't sure whether you sent it or not. But I'm like, that's where I want you. I want you just before that orange. I always reward people calling oranges because I think, this idea of the perfect dom doesn't exist. It doesn't happen that often, to be honest, because I should be able to read them enough to know that line. That's part of my job.
You literally took them to their own edge.
Yeah.
And that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think calling a safe word, orange or red, as long as it's not happening to you frequently as a dom, you are doing your job right because you're taking people to the edge and learning what their real boundary is.
Yeah. It's hard. I have a bit of a mixed relationship with it because sometimes your ego does get in the way. And if someone's called a safe word, it's like, fuck. I try not to make it about, I haven't done my job. I really, really try hard. But sometimes those thoughts do creep in. Like, I didn't want them to have to call their orange. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to take them to that edge. And obviously, I've just gone a little bit over it. But you're right. For me, it's very rare these days that someone would call an orange on me. And we can't really let our ego get in the way of that.
Although it's easy, but even just being aware of the ego is half the battle. I'm like, oh, that's
100%.
just my ego. I'll like pet it afterwards and it will calm down.
Exactly.
What do you find makes good subs? A lot of my listeners are very curious about hiring a pro dom. When someone comes to you, what's the process? Like, how do they find you? What do you ask? How do you bring them into your dungeon or wherever you're seeing them?
Yeah. Mainly these days, I have regular clients. I actually love newbies. It's just one of my things. I love newbies. So while like the majority of my clients are people who are now regular clients, I will see newbies. So they generally have found me either like through my website, sometimes through my Instagram, and then I have one site that I do advertise on. So it'll be one of those methods. I have a simple process of what I send them, like how it all works. If they are someone who is either experienced or looking for more of an ongoing relationship, I will then send them a separate document that will go through things like, activities, limits, experience, all that kind of stuff, just so I have a little bit of a brief. But I also have the policies that the person I negotiate with is the person in the room. So I don't really care who's emailed me because I don't know who emailed me. All I know is the person who walks into my dungeon on that day is the person I'm going to be negotiating with. So it doesn't matter if you've given me every last piece of information. I still need to have a really thorough pre-scene negotiation. That's the setup, and that's how you kind of get into me. What kind of makes, I don't love using the word good submissive, but let's just say it that way. Obviously, some people are very nervous when they come in, and I really have sympathy for that. I understand that. I think I'm the type of person that can pretty much put people at ease quite quickly once you meet me. In a pre-scene negotiation, I'm not in full-blown dom mode. While I'm not what I'd say at my softest is in the aftercare. That's when you'll get soft me. The pre-scene negotiation, I'm a bit more like neutral, but I'm still caring. And also like nothing you can say can shock me really anymore. And I think people can understand that. Like literally you can say anything to me and I'll be fine. It doesn't mean I'll do it, but it won't shock me. Even though that they can be extremely nervous, the most important thing is that they can communicate with me. And sometimes nerves does stop that. But if I'm communicating with someone who's not giving me anything back, I can't create a good scene. And sometimes they literally have given me no activities or nothing to work with. And I'm like, I can't do anything without your consent. First, from a submissive's point of view, is before they step in is, again, start at the desires. I always ask people, what's your intention for this session? Even if it's a regular with me, I want to know what their intention is. Did you have a really shitty day at work today? Did you have a fight with your partner 2 minutes before you stepped into this room? Like, where's your head and where do you want your head to be at the end of the session? So that's a really important thing. And just being able to communicate your boundaries and limits and all that stuff. I also like to ask people if they know it or try to get an idea. I can kind of sometimes ask questions about what's their attachment styles. How do you receive love? Because that's going to tell me about the best way to motivate them with rewards. Asking about, punishment versus punishment. I also think sometimes in kink, people who just want to play are kind of seen as less, and I don't. Sometimes I'll have subs and we are working on a goal. Like we have a goal, we have a training plan, and that's what we're working towards. And I love that. That's amazing. But there's some people who just want to come in and play, and they don't want to do punishment. They want to do punishment. And
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. And I think sometimes in the kink community, we can be like, you're not really kinky because you just want to play and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what's wrong with play?
That's such a good question. I loved hearing you go through all of that because one of the things that I think that a lot of people aren't expecting is when you go meet a pro dom to negotiate, that dom is not going to be in high protocol mode during negotiation. It's a
No.
conversation. And I think that throws people. There seems to be sometimes this fantasy or image that doms are like that 24/7 and they're going to be like that
Yeah.
nonstop. And that's just not the reality of it. You're dealing with a real human who wants to have fun with you or give you the experience you desire.
Exactly. I mean, it would be exhausting to be in that 24 hours, 7 days a week. And that's how we get dom burnout, is because we're too much in that position. That's why I, like 2 years into my career, I had a massive burnout. I ended up in hospital and had to take 2 months off work. I was taking on way too many clients. I was in that dom persona too much. No one was holding space for me. Like, it's just not realistic that someone can do that.
How did you learn to take care of yourself, or what did you learn about taking care of yourself after that period?
I learned through the burnout. And it's funny because now I obviously train DOMs as like, especially pro DOMs. What I'll talk about is like how to prevent it and things to do. But I'm like, you will probably learn through a burnout. Unfortunately, like I've yet met someone that really does like a space holding role that's never burned out to learn the lesson. Like it's just something you've got to go through. But obviously there's things about understanding your own limits as a dom, which especially if you're a professional, even if your lifestyle is like, how often can I hold space for someone? We all have different capacities. So that's like, how often can I scene with someone? Even what types of scenes do I want to be creating? Because if you're doing things that you don't want to do and going against your own limits and boundaries, that's going to burn you out. Aftercare for DOMs is massive. One, I was taking on way too many clients was my first one. Second, I was doing the most half-assed aftercare routine for myself. Like what I do, I take off whatever I was wearing for the scene and have a shower and be like, wash it off, wash off the scene. And then I'm like, cool, ready to go. And it just wasn't enough. And now I do things like I meditate daily. I do breath work. I really ground myself before I take on clients. Also, like energy was a big one with me in my burnout. I had no energy boundaries. Like I do psilocybin journeys with my therapist of 10 years sometimes. And in one of my journeys, my clients came into it and it was them taking my blood like vampires. And I realized it was my energy. I said this during this journey to my therapist is, oh, my energy is not a tap. It's a bucket. Like I thought I just turn the tap on and all my energy comes out as much as I want. And then I realized, oh, I get like a finite amount every day and I need to be very careful where that energy goes. And so I learned in my sessions, rather than giving my energy, which is what I was doing, is I use their energy. So that's why I tap into their energy. That's why I tune to their energy, is because I don't want them draining my energy. I'm going to hold this space with my energy, but you're not going to take my energy away from me anymore. So that was a real big turning point. So I'm very careful with my energy now.
I want to understand this deeper. You explained it perfectly, but would you say in order to stop them from taking your energy and you being able to use their energy instead and work with their energy, it almost sounds like you stepped out of a performer role and into something else.
Yeah, that's a really good pickup. I mean, I remember the very first night I was invited with my best friend who was the Dom. That's how I got into it, to double Dom with her. That was the birth of Mistress Tash Mia. But Mistress Tash Mia back then was a role. She had aspects of myself, definitely, but it was like stepping into a character. And then as the years went on, we eventually fused together, and that's where I became an authentic Dom. It wasn't so much that role anymore. It was really about who I am and aspects of that.
Yeah.
How it's expressed is obviously different in a dungeon than in an outside world. I think to be able to do this long term, especially, you need to find the authentic Dom in you.
And by those two people coming together and being one, you've really hit your authenticity stride.
That's also what makes me successful in what I do, because people can feel if it's a role and they can feel if it's actually authentic.
Yeah, I think so too. That it's obvious when it's a performance. Even when you're watching it, if you're at a club and you see a scene happening, I think you can see when, wow, there's a real energy connection here versus, oh, this person is playing a role and they're doing fantastic, but the energy connection isn't.
I did some performances. A friend of mine was kind of running these They weren't kink parties. I don't know. My partner used to call them like vanilla parties with kink dress up. But
Okay.
he's from Berlin. So he's like from the kinkiest place in the
On
world.
earth. Yes.
But it was that kind of theme. And I did some performances there with a submissive. I actually didn't do the last one because I felt they were so performative. Like to me, a scene is so intimate. It's not a whole bunch of people watching me do it. And
Yeah,
it
that's
was
fair.
very performative. But, you know, that's what that thing required. It was a performative thing. It almost didn't really align to me.
Yeah.
I went away not feeling good. I went away feeling like a fraud. I went away feeling like I'd put on this role. It just didn't reflect to me what dominance was.
Oh, that says so much about your integrity that you stepped away from doing it because you knew it didn't feel right to put on
Yeah.
that performance.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you coach or you train pro doms who are
Yeah.
wanting to level up their skill. We imagine a pro dom already knows everything, but what are they coming to you to learn?
I mean, it depends. I have trained and still do train like people who like, are just going into it. And that's starting at the very basics of everything. The one thing I always say is like, I can train any monkey to use the tools. Do you know what I mean? Like, you
Yeah.
need to know it, as I said, from a safety perspective. You 100% you need to know how to use the tools. And that's why I had like my first course, which was how to be a Dom. It's a really practical course to show people how to use the tools because you need to know that from a competence and safety point of view. So I'm not undermining that at all. It is very important. But to me, that's not the hard stuff. The hard stuff is the psychological stuff. It's learning about the different styles of dominance. Generally, the Damiana Chi, you know, she came up with the 4 archetypes.
Yeah.
So I have not exactly the same, but my kind of versions of those, because especially if you're a pro dom, not a complete dom, but you need to understand all facets of dominance. Because if you don't understand all facets of dominance, when you're with different clients, there's just going to be a little bit of a gap. So, you know, learning about that, what are the different aspects of dominance if you're coming at from a pro dom? A lifestyle dom, I'm more trying to discover what is their natural style of dominance because generally we lean into one or two naturally. Like for myself, I always leaned more into the caregiver and more of a sensual dom. Like they
Yeah.
came really easy for me. And I struggled a bit more with the authoritative, meaner dom and the queen, surprisingly. Those were the two that I had to work on. And the way I had to work on them wasn't like forcing myself into them. It was more being able to relate to them in a way of why are these two blocking me? And understanding my psychology of why those ones are hard for me. For example, with the authoritarian rule maker, I guess in my kink world, and I came into it from a corporate background, and I came into it from someone who'd always followed the rules of society of what they had given to me. So I was like, I don't want to be a rule maker. I want to break the rules. So I had to realize that that's not what the authoritarian's doing. She's providing structure so that you can like go through this journey or achieve these goals or providing discipline. And she's providing the safety rails of this scene because without her, it's not a safe scene. The sub doesn't know where they're going if you don't have those safety rails. So I could relate to that in that way. And then, for example, with the queen and the whole worship aspect, I'd always rejected this theory of women being objectified. So I don't want someone worshiping me. Like I'm my own queen and blah, 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 blah. But I realized I'm actually not accepting the queen in myself. And that was the issue. I wasn't worshiping myself. I was completely rejecting the idea of me being this divine queen because I wasn't seeing that self-worth in myself. And so that was the aspect I had to then work on. And now that's how I relate to it. So I think to me, when I'm training someone, that's the crux of it. It's those aspects or understanding like the different types of submissives and what different types of submissive wants. So I think to me, the psychology is way more rich when you're training someone than just how to use a flogger.
It really is. I could also see how that's extra important for pros to be able to lean into and at least embody all 4 types. Whereas,
Yeah.
as you said, the lifestyle dom, someone who might not want to do this as a pro just for their partner, they might naturally have that same energy or match up like that. And then it's just about how to really navigate it and use it. But I love that you explained where you weren't relating to specific
Yeah.
ones and how you found it in yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And you made a really good point with the lifestyle DOMs. It is, I think, more important that they do lean more into their own specific type of authentic dominance in those areas because you don't want to be performing for someone that you're doing in a lifestyle relationship with. I always say, because people, you know, come to advice about like kinky dating and stuff and being compatible. And I'm like, it matters even more than in vanilla relationships. You know, you might be dom, they might be sub, but you might be so on different ends of those spectrums that you just don't align. And I think it's even more important in those dynamics.
I know sometimes dating when kinky is like playing on a hard mode because you have that extra layer. Non-kinky people
Yeah.
are struggling with dating. And then when we add kink into it, sometimes you need that extra support and that extra discipline, honestly, to stay true to what you're looking for.
I always say, like, to people, vanilla is not a derogatory term. It's just to identify kinky from non-kinky. But it's hard enough in vanilla life to date these days. I mean, yeah, adding a level of kink onto it and trying to align those, I can see why sometimes people drop their list of what really they want. But I'm like, it's worth it to hold out.
Yes, it really is. Even the list, if you just prioritize the top 3 and make sure you're not compromising on those, I think that can be enough. You know,
Yeah.
also just a side point on dating. Society tells them kink isn't that important because sex is not important. But if kink is important to you, then it's important, full stop. Like, period, end of sentence.
100%. And when I'm talking about navigating relationship challenges, or a big one is, how do I communicate my kink to my partner? That's always a really big one that I talk to people about. And like, I have ways of, you know, the best way to try and introduce it. Like, obviously, don't, like, in the middle of sex, be like, start spanking me. Not the best moment. But once you kind of work through the steps that you kind of should take about how to communicate to them, it is their right to say, I'm not interested. Just as it's your right to say, I am. You have a choice. Is this kink and this part of you so important to you that you don't want to shove it back in the closet or wherever it came from and find someone else? And I mean, I can't make that decision for people. That has to be their own. I know for me, I don't want to live my life in a closet. And so I know what that decision would be for me, but it can be a really hard decision for people to take. But just as it's your right to want to be your kinky self, it's their right not to be.
Yeah, completely. And sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow. It's hard to accept, especially when we really feel connection in other ways. Again, it's all about being authentic. Stay true to what you're looking for.
And look, I've done those relationships. I've even been in relationships where we have met in the most kinkiest way possible. And then we didn't have that discussion. And then we just went into assumed monogamy. I mean, this is like over 10 years ago. And I'm like, how did I end up here? Do you know, because we didn't have that communication. And I do think like times have changed now. So I think people are more aware to talk about this stuff. I mean, when I first got into like the open lifestyle, not many people would have known what non-monogamy was at that point.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like you did end up in these situations where it was like assumed non-kinky or assumed monogamy. And then from that experience, at least I learned like, I am so upfront when I date someone now. Like I went through a phase where I was probably too upfront. Literally 5 minutes into the date, it's like, I'm non-monogamous. Like, deal with it or go away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't care how great you are. I am not changing. And that's where I am now. It's like, I don't care how amazing you seem. I'm kinky and I'm non-monogamous, and that is never changing.
That is the only way to date. And some people are like, oh, you need to give it time. And I'm like, no, if it's important to you, bring it up on date 1.
Yeah.
You know?
Also, I think it's good to get their initial reaction, because the other thing that happened to me when I eased them into it is they would agree and they'd be like, oh my God, you're amazing. Blah, 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 blah. You're my dream girl. They think like I can cheat. That's what they think it's about. And then 3 months into it, it was always 3 months, they would get to the point where they couldn't handle it because I'd be doing my thing. They might be trying to do their thing and they just couldn't handle it and it would never work out. And I realized you can't be on this journey for me. You need to be on it for yourself. So I'm always very careful if I meet people who are not in the lifestyle, who are, you know, not already kinky, whether are they doing this for me or are they doing it for themselves?
Because I can see how alluring and exciting it would be. And especially to do it for you. I think that you naturally probably have people who do a lot of things for you or want to do a lot of things for you. So you have that extra layer of having to figure out.
Yeah. And I think also if I'm ever on like a dating app or something, obviously I have my profession, but I write in there, you need to understand that my professional life is my professional life. But it's incredible how many people are like, don't me, and like asking, I'm like, always my reply is like, okay, what's your job? And they're like, dentist. And I'm like, cool, can I come to your job and get like a free clean? Because that's what you're asking me. Like, that's the equivalent. You're just asking me to give you my profession for free. But also the thing is like, I spend so much of my week and so much of my time holding space for others. and creating scenes and all this stuff. And it's a mass amount of energy in every way possible, not just physically, emotional, spiritually, that when I am in my, personal life, I want to be met by someone who can also do the same for me.
Yeah,
People fall in love with the idea of what my job is.
that's tough.
Yeah.
Especially because it might be something they want. But I think once people reach that level where they're falling in love with a specific part of someone, everything else for them fades and they
Yeah.
only see that one part. And then they no longer have the ability to even see the real person. But
Yeah,
beyond that,
exactly.
I spent some time as a pro dom. I was a pro dom in New York City for 2 years, and I dated during that 2 year period. And I found that time and time again. It was like, wow, that's so interesting. You're so interesting.
Oh, yeah.
And once they said those words, I was like, well, this is fucked. And I hated that I learned that. But as soon as they said those words in that order of that's so interesting, you're so interesting, I was like, they don't see me anymore.
That's a really good point. Sometimes I'll just be at like events with people, like just normal events, and they find out what I do and their eyes. And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I'm going into performing monkey mode now.
Yep. I hate to admit that, but that is exactly what it is. And I know they
It's
don't
like
mean anything by
dance,
it,
monkey dance.
but you're like the most novel thing they've probably met at whatever party too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then all the questions come. I love what I do, so I don't mind answering questions, but it then gets to the point sometimes where I do feel like that performing monkey.
Yeah, especially if they want the really scandalous stories. That's like one about every 5 sessions maybe also, but that's like between me and the person that I
Yeah.
have that experience with.
Yeah.
So you train DOMs, both pro, and you offer a number of courses helping people navigate this type of lifestyle for themselves and also lean into their dominance.
Yeah.
Are you teaching both men and women? Like, are your courses geared to everyone?
My courses are always like gender neutral. They're geared to everyone. Obviously, there's a section in my How to Be a Dom course about CBT. So depending on which way your sexuality swings, that's not going to cover everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I always try and make sure that everything's gender neutral.
When you say CBT, well, cock and ball torture, are you
Yeah.
explaining different ways to tie up the balls and cock
Yeah.
safely and just how to play with that safely?
Yeah, so in my the flagship How to Be a Dom course, it's divided up into different modules. So, like discipline, spanking, like all the different activities. And then there's beginner, intermediate, advanced. So I start with theory, a bit of brief theory, and then it goes into those different levels. So in that course, I'm actually showing you what to do.
That's phenomenal. That's really rare. So many people, myself included, focus more on the psychology of it, but I
Yeah.
do not offer that type of instruction. I love that you have that out there and that there's something for everyone.
Yeah.
So what is next for Mistress Tash Mia?
I mean, for me, like I'm just still growing my brand. I recently launched another side to my brand, which was my Soft Power by Tash, which is a fall-on effect from really everything I've been doing over the last 20 years. It's a combination of what I learned in my corporate and my MBA life. It's a combination of me as a pro dom for the last 7 years, like the somatic stuff that I've been doing. And so that's a new area of my brand that I'm trying to grow. And then I'm going to be launching my rituals kit, which is basically like a playbook, which you can take home yourself. It's a digital product at the moment. I'm looking to take it physical soon. How do I actually make this work at home? Because my problem was I'd see these kink kits, like generally they had the handcuffs and the rope. And I'm like, but someone who's just stepping into kink is going to take this home and be like, and like,
It's going to
that's not
sit
a
on the
thing.
bedside table for
Yeah,
months.
it's like, how do you actually make a scene? So my rituals kit is like you have a playbook and then there's templates as well. So there's a scene creation template, there's communication templates, there's negotiation templates, so that you can literally like take it and with your partner or with yourself with solo play, you can literally be like, okay, this is how we're going to like create our own play. I called it the ritual kit because I think it should be like a ritual. Like to me, when you step in a scene, you're stepping into this beautiful ritual space. And it covers that as well. How do you design your ritual? And so that's like my next thing coming out.
Okay, we will definitely link to that in the show notes. But if I just wanted to find you, where can all of our listeners find you if they go looking right
100%.
now?
Best way is my Instagram's got all my links there. So at the world of Tash Mia.
At the world of Tash Mia. Perfect. Tash, thank you so much for being here today. It was
Thanks
so
for
fun
having me.
talking to you. I love
Yeah.
all the stories you shared. You brought so much fun and that's so interesting. You are so interesting. But I really genuinely mean that, Tash. This has been a great talk. I have loved every minute of it. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me. I have so much respect for you and everything you do as well. So I was just so stoked when you asked me to be on this. So
Oh,
thank you.
thank you.